Hello, my name is Christy Godwin. I'm a psychic medium. I'm here today with my friend Sarah. She was so kind to be able to discuss her reading. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for asking me.
So it's a beautiful day. I can feel the sun coming in. So if you see me getting blinded, I'll pop over and close my blinds. So now how did you find me, Sarah? Because I'm in Nebraska and you're in a different part of the United States.
Right, I'm in Virginia and I found you online on Facebook. Um, in the last year or so, I've been more interested in psychic ability and psychic reading. And one day you were just on my news feed, so I clicked like and I've been following you since.
Thank you. I love how people say that so often, and they'll say, "Well, you just came across my newsfeed,"
Mm.
and then when I read those people, spirit will always take responsibility of making that happen. I just love it when that occurs, and we'll get to later who actually took responsibility. Now, had you
Right,
been reading before you booked with me?
I have. So growing up, this was just part of life, and I've had some readings as a teenager and they were great. But I was young and naive, and life hasn't didn't crash down on me yet. As a young adult, I had some more readings that were very profound. The reader has since passed away, but I did actually take some notes, and I look back on those notes after I talked with you, and there is something very significant that she said that you reiterated. So I would say that 25 years ago. So how about that? Then within this last year, I really started focusing on psychic ability again after a very traumatic experience in my life. And I did connect with a psychic, and she is absolutely fabulous. And it's interesting because she was very focused on one spirit. So when I met with you, I think I had maybe 15, 20 spirits come in, and it was like waiting room. So totally different dynamic, but very cool to know that I'm surrounded by so many spirits.
I find I'm so glad you brought that up because sometimes I forget that very few mediums read that way because you're usually under a time crunch,
Mhm.
like being under a time crunch. And if I am, I start calling my clients and asking them, I would start trying to maneuver my schedule because I do not like to see spirits waiting to come in. And you do at some point have to end the reading just because for time purposes. But I never bring through one spirit ever. I'm trying to think, have I ever? I don't. Maybe if I'm doing mini reads, like there are places where you'll have 15 minutes. I don't know if you've ever had one of those, but they're called mini reads, and you just sit
Right.
down and the medium reads you. Then I'll bring through. But yesterday I was even reading a lady. She owns a local shop, crystal shop, and I was actually giving her a soul plan. And during this soul plan, which is not mediumship at all, I brought through four spirits just because if they're standing there, I have to tell you what they're saying. I feel
Right.
bad. I just feel so bad if they're standing there. But I'm so glad you brought that because my social media person has many times told me, Christy, you should charge by the spirit, not by the hour, because I always bring through so many. Because everyone has spirits that they want that are around them and they want to come through and they have things to say. And it did happen with you. And I tell people that what I call the star of the show, the spirit that you really want to hear from, usually comes in later to give the opportunity for everyone else to come through. And then that tells you right there that spirits have been watching, they already know the medium because spirits feel comfortable waiting to come in, the ones that you really want to see. If you're with a medium that is just going to bring through one spirit, the one that you want to see the most is going to come through first.
Right. Then he would have jumped the line.
He would
Um,
jump the line.
yeah. But he is very polite. And so, since he knew that you would certainly get to him, I thought it was really nice that he's like, go ahead, because he knew I wouldn't end without him coming through. And he, of course, knew that you were gonna. take the time with
Right.
them. So that's generally how my dad was. If he was in a party, you know, he'd go around, make sure everybody was comfortable and okay, and
Mhm.
the life of the party. So I kind of felt him going around to all the spirits in your room, like, everybody good?
Yes.
So that would be about perfect.
That was, yeah, and he came through like that also with that gentle spirit. And for those watching, of course, I was talking to Sarah a little bit before I started recording, and of course, he made an appearance this morning. And that doesn't always happen when I do recordings, but I kept hearing these words drop in my head. I was like, "Where is that coming from?" And I turned to where spirits come in, and there he was standing. Like, oh, that does not surprise me. Very politely trying to get my attention.
See, that makes me so happy and full of gratitude, because I know that he'll never leave me, but how very nice just to have that anyway.
Yes, and he again brought through information, evidential information today that he did not tell me about the other day. He was
Right.
mentioning some of his favorite foods today. Well, because
Yes.
I asked him.
Yeah. He showed you that he was grilling.
Yes.
And that is very much an inside joke, because I don't care for what he was grilling. And he thinks it's just fabulous and he loves it very much. So he'd be all smiles and really enjoy it, whereas it's something I wouldn't enjoy. So it's just a perfect thing for him to show, because I would know that connection immediately.
Yes, and spirits are really good about that. And I will stop them. Like if they've given me a lot of information and you as a sitter is like, I'm not sure, it could be a couple of people, I would say, well, wait a minute. And I turn to the spirit. And so many times I'll say, make it good. That means
That's right.
to the end, you need to bring me something that they can identify. But you did identify your dad pretty easily the other day.
Oh, yes.
Now, what surprised you the most in the reading? What part of the reading surprised you?
Well, actually, there were several things above and beyond the amount of spirits, which is just so awesome. The first spirit that you brought through was a young adult male who was showing you that he was abused, and that was physical abuse. And I was racking my brain on that one. But it's very interesting, because years ago we did foster care, and we did immediate foster care for kids who needed immediate placement before they were in a long-term situation. So we had several kids come through, and we were often given teenagers and sibling groups. So we had one particular sibling group where the son, most unfortunately, was treated worse than any of the other siblings. So when he came through to you, he was showing you the physical abuse. And I was just racking my head on that. But then I realized, we were short-term care. I wouldn't know now who had passed. So many go through your house and you don't know the outcome. That's not the purpose. So I'm pretty certain I know who it was. There were like two that could fit that description, but one really hit home with me. So again, in that type of situation, I'm not going to know if they've passed or not. But I believe his message was basically, thank you. There was nothing you could have done. We were pretty much beyond repair before we got to you. So, I have over the years felt like, was there some way I could have done better? So that was nice to have that confirmation.
He was I'd forgotten that.
Yeah.
Again, something else that Sarah's dad was teasing me about, because the words he was dropping in my head, I turned to him, I was like, what are you talking about? And he was like, don't you remember the reading? And then he related it back to the reading. So many times I forget, because I don't think the information, I just bring it through. But mentioning that little boy, and he wasn't little when he presented, he showed me what he looked like when he was a little, and it was heart-wrenching. Abuse. And he was so incredibly thankful for that just momentary peace he had in his life. Like, your house was such a safe haven for him.
So, I always just put in the back of my mind that I tried my best. And it's really nice to know that that is accurate. So I'm glad. I'm really glad about that. And I wasn't expecting it. So really neat, because I'm expecting, okay, Dad, front and forward, let's go.
Right.
And then you bring through somebody totally unexpected. And I like that, because I wasn't anticipating it. And it was really good information and a little bit of closure.
Right.
Now, also one that was super interesting is you said there's a hunter here.
I do remember him.
And I'm like, oh no, not for me. Let's move on. Don't know any hunters. Let's go. Let's go. And so you asked him for something else specific that I would recognize. And he's like, oh no, it's hunting. It's hunting. That's what I'm showing you. And, you know, I was like, not for me. And then I believe he showed you some hunting gear, like super close, as if to say, come on, get it already. And so that's when I realized that is actually a friend of my wife's, and she would never do this. So how cool that he found a way that I would relay that message. And I really like that you're saying, you know, show me something else so she'll catch a clue. But he was like, nope, it's hunting. That's the only way she's going to know. And in my head, I'm like, nah, that's not me. I'm not into that. But, you know, he was right. Took me a minute, but yes, he was a dear friend of my wife's. And again, she would never do this. So for me to take that information and relay it to her, how profound. She was delighted, by the way, I did mention it. And how nice of him. Now, I only knew him for the last few months of his life, but he had a significant impact on both of us. And so I really appreciated that he took the time to come to you. And I really think it's great that he was sticking with the hunting gear.
You know, that is so funny because some spirits will do that. And, you know, sometimes you can, as a medium, you're like, am I seeing that right? And as I'm trying to force him to show me something else, he stood firm. He's like, no, I'm all about hunting. And I was turning to, I was like, he's just still talking about hunting. I don't even know. And then that's when he showed me like the gear. I don't know if it was like, I keep wanting to put like these camouflage pants on her. It was, and that's when you got it. But because again, I will bring through all these spirits. I have so many spirits that come through trying to get messages to people related to the sitter. I had a lady message me, I don't know, a couple of days ago, and apparently I had read a friend of her daughter's. Her daughter had passed. Remember it. Apparently I said some things about the daughter's passing that no one knew except for the immediate family. And so I kept saying, this daughter wants you to get a message back to her mom. So the person sitting with me told the mom, and the mom messaged me thanking me. But, you know, because I take the time to bring through all the spirits, they feel comfortable coming forward. And let me tell you, they take every opportunity they can.
I bet. And how nice. And I'm really grateful to him to coming to you, because again, that message would have never been pushed through. And it was really, really nice. And I'm so glad that he was part of the crowd that day.
He was. And I always tell people when they come to me for reading that don't just focus on who you think is going to come through. Broaden your perspective of who this description might fit as they come through.
Exactly. And so
you really had to do that.
Yeah. Based on what you just said, another one is you kept saying a female figure similar to an aunt, but older. And in my head, well, my dad's family didn't have any female siblings. And my mother's side, all of her siblings that are female are living. So I'm like, I don't know, you know, whatever. And then, of course, it is my great aunt. So my grandfather's sister. So when she says aunt, that is accurate. But older would be great aunt. And you had said that she's very peppy, and she was super peppy. In fact, we joked that she probably danced her way on over to the other side. Hopefully my dad greeted her and there was this little welcome committee of dancing going on.
Yes. Actually, when you said your aunt and she came up peppy, I was getting her doing this, turning around in a circle.
So that would be exactly what she would do. And her daughter, who would be my cousin, but one generation up, her and I communicate quite a bit now after the passing of her mother and my father. So this is my dad's aunt. And they were very close in life. And one of the things that's helped us is to know that they're together now. And so for her to be happy and dancing a little jig, it kind of went right along with what we were hoping the grand entrance was.
Yeah.
And I was really glad that she came through, and it took me a minute on that one because I was just thinking of aunt. I wasn't thinking of, the next generation of aunt.
Mm-hmm.
So that was pretty great.
That is true, because, and I also say when people come through, I feel into energetic. Sometimes the spirit will absolutely say, I am this to them.
Right.
But usually I'm feeling into the energetic vibration of the relationship. And so I will say, it feels like an aunt, but then sometimes the feeling of an aunt can be if your mom had a really good friend who an aunt role for you, or in your case, a great aunt. Yeah. So sometimes, and because I do take the time and people come through that you don't expect to come through, sometimes it can take a few minutes to place them. But again, I never bring through messages until you tell me, oh yeah, that's my wife's friend or my great aunt or someone.
Yeah, it's interesting to really have to process and think outside of the box. And then once you get it, it's like, duh, of course.
Yes.
How did I miss that? And then it's like, great, I really have things to say. And this is so cool. But that was awesome. Now she is, newly on the other side, several months, but newly, and my dad had passed before her. So it is comforting to know that among all the spirits, she and my dad were both there.
Yes, you had quite the slew.
Another one that I have just been thinking about ever since you and I talked was, so first of all, I feel like there were so many female people or female spirits older than me in life that came through, and I felt so just supported by all these older women. But one of them was when I was very young, we had a neighbor, and she adored me from the minute I was born.
Oh, I do remember. Yes.
She called me precious, and I was just so amazing to her. And how phenomenal. It really does change somebody's existence if they're born into being just spectacular right off the bat, compared to the poor kid you first brought through. It's just night and day. My childhood is night and day. And
that is so true. Yes.
That foundation is profound. And when she came through to you, so now I'm in the mindset of, okay, grandparents, and I have a slew of them. So let's think grandparents. But she came through to you, and she was kind of fussing in the kitchen. So every time I came in as a child, her response would be to fuss in the kitchen. And what I realized is that every time I entered her house, which was like almost every day, she would fix me strawberry milk. So of course she would go straight, and I would be sitting there at the table, but she would go straight to the counter and fix the strawberry milk. So that's how I could identify her. And of course she is, a grandparent figure.
Yes. I do remember her coming through now. Yeah. And I couldn't even get her out of the kitchen.
Yeah.
Because sometimes if I'm bringing through information, I was like, okay, show me something else. And then the spirit will take me outside or something else they enjoy doing. I couldn't get that lady out of the kitchen. I was like, take me somewhere else. She's like, nope, we're staying in the kitchen.
And back in the day, she had a very old farmhouse. So her dining room table was in the kitchen. So I would sit there, but be able to watch her do all that puttering around. So it was just perfect that she would be right there in the kitchen. And she used to always say that I was such a good girl that I would just sit there and, just wait so patiently for my strawberry milk. So,
it is not related to your reading, but so profound what you just said about how you coming up in that environment where you were just unconditionally loved, and the difference that had on you as opposed to that little boy who I brought through, who showed me physical scars on his body from where he'd been abused, and the difference that makes, and just the outcome.
Yeah, it changes everything about a person. It really does.
And also I want to relate back to you, that message that little boy said, that you giving that unconditional love just was the only bright light in his life, and what a blessing you have been. And he did relate that. It wasn't that you had not just been a blessing to him, you have been a blessing to a lot of other kids. And I will say for those watching that, I didn't know Sarah. She just popped up on my screen. You start bringing these spirits through, but when you pop up, I can already get a feel for what kind of person you are. So I was quite confused on why a little abused boy was coming through because
I know, right? Like, oh my God. Yeah.
I was a little bit, I give what I get, but I was like, I don't know.
I know, right off the bat too, like no introduction, here we go.
Exactly. If he had come in a little bit later, I'm
Right.
like, yeah, no, but I just went with it. I was like, okay, this is who I got. Let's go.
But see, good for him, because in life it was very difficult for him to communicate because, why bother? Nobody ever cared what he had to say.
Mhm.
So I really like that he was front and center, kind of like, okay, I finally get to say what I needed to say. So
And it's so true. He was the first one, and there was even though I could feel his very sad and depressed and just beaten down energy, it was all about, I have come to give this message. Let's go. I'm ready. I'm going to do this. It was actually beautiful.
That's awesome.
What would you say to people who are skeptical about having a reading?
I would say that, life is short. This is not the forever. The forever is on the other side. And so we don't know how long we're here, but why not just put your guard down and give it a try? I mean, what do you have to lose? And there's so many thoughts about it. And some people are like, oh, no way. And some people are very interested. And again, just give it a shot. You really have nothing to lose, and you may be quite amazed the experience.
I will say that I have read skeptics and believers alike, and no one has ever left me remaining an unbeliever.
Right.
I was just looking at my list. I did forget to ask you a question. We might have already covered it. Not just, was there a message that surprised you the most?
Oh, yes. So this is what I wanted to loop back to. I'm glad you brought it up.
I almost have a list of notes here.
Nice. Somebody most precious to me passed away probably 25 years ago, and it was profound and it was terrible, and she was young, and there was just no justification for the pain and the everything that she had to endure. So because she was so young, early 30s, it was really difficult to let her go, because at that time I'm in my late 20s and I'm naive, and people don't die when they're in their mid 30s. That was back in the day when, I was not yet enlightened as much. So the second to the last thing she said to me in the hospital was, I will always be at your right shoulder. Because I was saying, I can't do this without you, don't go. And she kind of looked at me like, well, I'm not really going. I'll always be at your right shoulder. And then the very last thing she ever said to me or to anybody, her last words in life were, let me go now, which means she's ready. I better, be okay too, because she's the one who's passing. So, but what really hit me profoundly was I'll always be at your right shoulder. So some of her very last words. And then when I was going through my journals from back in the day, and I had talked to the psychic who had since passed away, she made comment that she's at your right shoulder. Now, that was decades ago. I hadn't thought about it too much since then, because it was so traumatic that I did everything I needed to do and then was moving on because life is short. And then when we met the other day, you had said that she said, I'll always be at your right shoulder, or I'm still at your right shoulder. So I know good and well that the other side doesn't have the same yearly timeline that we do. But to me, we're talking decades. So decades later, she gives you the same message that helped me decades ago. Mm-hmm. And so first of all, how very nice of her to tell you that and for you to relay it to me, because that would be something that I would instantly know. Mm-hmm. and remember, this life and the next one and the other side, I'll always remember it. Yes. And it was just really good confirmation.
I love that. That's so beautiful.
Like she knew exactly what to say
Mhm.
without a doubt.
I do remember her coming through now. She started out with the way she was dressed, and then as we got into it was towards the end of her giving me information, everything. I started feeling pressure on my right shoulder, and I can remember like getting in my chair, like, something was wrong with my shoulder, and I just kept feeling it more. I was like, oh, that's her. She's pushing on my shoulder. And that's when it's funny because sometimes, and I probably did a couple of times with you, I try to keep talking to my sitter while in my head I'm talking to the spirit so I can keep it going. Every once in a while, if they're telling me something I really have to concentrate on, you'll see me do this. And my poor sisters are probably like, is she in a trance? What is she doing? But if it's something very serious or I really have to get right, you'll see me stop and look for a moment. And so I can remember I was having this pressure on my shoulder. And as I'm talking to you, I was like, why are you doing that? Why are you pushing on my shoulder?
So I've been feeling really good because I knew that. I knew that when I was in my mid-20s, but I've been feeling really good lately because she's still at my right shoulder. And how fortunate am I that I'm going through life with this support? So, I mean, I've been feeling great ever since you said that.
And, I do want to also mention for those who have lost loved ones, I mean, it was traumatic for you, love of your life, just you all had a beautiful love story. But then she was she took responsibility for helping like get you out the door when you were going through the depression of losing her so you could go on to meet someone else.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's all like pre-planned. It's just,
Yes.
we don't know. But in retrospect, some of us do know. And so when I look back and see how it all played out, it's like, oh, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
And even as I know these things, I know, a psychic medium is what I do. Mm-hmm. But, when you're living it, sometimes it's hard to stop and pay attention and go with the flow because you want to hurry up and make it happen. But sometimes the best thing you can do is kind of go with the flow and let things occur. And what's funny, I can remember her showing me specifically trying to get you out of the house and you wouldn't go. And then the visual she gave me was you standing at the door and her kicking you in the rear end.
Yeah, I actually would not leave the house for probably a good year unless it was to go to work because I just didn't care. Live or die, it didn't matter. And my friends, I'm so fortunate. I have so many good friends. And back in the day, friends would come over and just be like, if you're not going to go out, we're going to come here. And they would do my laundry and they would cook for me. And it was just this unconditional love. And they weren't trying to make me feel better because you really can't. It was just, we're going to support you no matter what it is. And we know it's really, really bad, but we're going to support. And I had one friend who came over and she's like, you're just coming out with me. And that's, it's non-negotiable. Let's go. She got my clothes. She's like, put these on. We're going. I remember she let the dog out because we might be a while. And it was the first time I went out, and it was really just because she wouldn't leave me alone. And it was like, I don't want to argue. Fine, whatever, I'll go.
Right.
And it was definitely, the spirit who came through to you, who's like, come on now, life is short, get out the door.
Exactly. She took full ownership of that. But I didn't know that about you. She was telling me, and then you confirmed it that yes, that had happened.
Yeah, because when you're young and you lose somebody, it's just so shocking because there's just, for me, I'm just saying for me, it's easy to be so naive because that's all I ever knew. And of course, people don't die unless they're old, and they've cycled out of life. But tragic events do occur, and it's most unfortunate. But the takeaway is that they're not really gone.
No, they're not. And I think that what you said was beautiful. If everyone could remember that sometimes you just show up, you can't make it better. And we feel such responsibility to try to make it better for the people that are left on earth that we left, but you can't make it better. All you can do is show up and be there.
Right. And I'm very fortunate again, because of my most recent tragic event of losing my dad. It seems like almost everybody in my village knows we're not going to make this better for her. We're just going to love her through her worst. And I am trying to always remember that when it's me trying to look out for somebody else. Really just can't fix the wounded. It takes time and support and unconditional love. So I am thankful for that. I'm thankful for my village, and I'm thankful that I've learned that lesson.
And your dad came this through. Was he the very last one that came through?
Yes. I was quite irritated. I was like, come on, Dad, let's go.
True to form. I read someone the other day and I forgot to tell them, because they had seen me read several times. They had seen me read live event, like I'd been Facebook Live. So they'd seen that. They'd gone to one of my platform events on Zoom where you buy a ticket and there's like 12 people and I just pull in spirits. So she had seen all of that. So I didn't go through my normal spiel. And this lady had, I don't know, 9, 10 spirits come through. And the very last one was her mom. And so she said at the end, she's like, well, thanks, Mom, for coming through. Like, I thought you weren't going to make it. And
I know, like, you have something else to do, too busy today. Yeah.
Exactly. And I had forgotten to tell her the star of the show, the star attraction is what I call them. They come in either next to last or last. Because she'd already seen me read so many times, I had forgotten to tell her that little portion, which would have been important. And I did tell her at that point, because poor lady was thinking her mom, wasn't going to come through. And that's who she really wanted to talk to.
Yeah, I was feeling that way too, because time's ticking. And I'm like, this is so great to connect with these people. And I am 110% on board. But hey, Dad, are you kicking around in the background? And sure enough.
And, it's true, because I, in my head, know if I have more time, because I know my schedule. We probably didn't think about that because we went way over.
Yes. And I appreciate that. Yeah.
Well, and you did hear me say, okay, towards the end, I mean, we were going on like the hour and 45-minute mark or something. And then I did I knew I had another appointment coming up, but Spirit also knows that.
Yeah. Oh, it's all pre-planned.
Yes, they know it. And they will start like timing me. I've had times where I'll sit in circles, and that's where it's just mediums who get together and practice, and you're hardcore on each other to really like hone your skills. And as I'm reading, and these things, you'll have like 7, 8, 9 minutes. Quite many people are there. The Spirit will start telling me, okay, your time's almost up. This is what I want to say. And sure enough, my time will almost be up.
Yep. They know the schedule.
They do.
Something I really liked that you did is, so Spirit would come forward and talk, and I'd say whatever, and they'd say whatever, but then they didn't leave. They just stepped back. And you made a comment that if something comes to mind, I can, still go back to that first spirit and relay it. So that made me feel comfortable, because it wasn't, oh, shoot, now they're gone and I didn't get to say X, Y, and Z. So of course I could say it anyway and they'd hear it. But it was really nice to know that they had just stepped back, that they were still there and available.
I didn't think about that. No one's ever mentioned it, but that probably is comforting. Yeah. So what Sarah's talking about is I bring forth the Spirit. I give you the message. I ask, do you have any questions for them? And then you say yeah or nay. And then I say, I'm gonna move on to the next one. And then that Spirit that we just read, I start lining them up. And I can look over there. You can say, oh, I have a question for whoever. And I know exactly where they're standing. I know exactly where to look, because they just line up.
I mean, that's really nice of them. And really nice of you to keep track, and really good for the person you're reading, because it's less stressful. Like, did I say everything I needed to say? You still have that option. So it allows you to intake without as much concern about what you said or didn't.
Thank you. That's a very good point. And we do frequently go back to ones that we.
Yeah. I hadn't had that happen before. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yes. So that was very nice of you. Sarah did touch on a few things. All mediums are different. A few things that is very different, as do bring through a lot of spirits. I'm big on personalities. Personalities are my thing. I really try to get the sitter to almost feel the person coming through, so that you can kind of just relish in their personality again. And then I line them up according to how many we have. I've had, if we have a lot, like with you, by the time we got to your dad, I remember he was almost in front of me, because we had around my office and come around.
Packed house. Yeah.
It was a packed house. Well, I want to thank you so much for being here today. I appreciate you giving me your time.
Thank you. I appreciate you meeting with me, and I appreciate you asking me, and I appreciate the opportunity to share a bit of what happened between us and the spirits. And it makes me thankful that other people can be open-minded.
Thank you. And that's why I try to do these. Is people say it's so normal. It's so normal.
Oh yeah.
Me looking to the left. My husband actually mentioned that to me yesterday because I had read someone and I was going to have some paperwork done by a professional who does paperwork. I'm not going to mention the profession, but and they just want me to read them instead of paying them. And I thought, that's odd. And so my husband, without me missing a beat, said, Christy, not everyone can just look to the left and see their past loved one standing there.
Right.
Yes.
It is a gift. Yes.
Yes. Well, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to email me at christygodwin111@gmail.com. Thank y'all, and y'all have a good day.